Welcome back to Confessions of a Street Broker on the Industrialist Podcast. My name's Jeremy Mercer, and today we've got something a little different for you. One of our listeners' favorite segments of the show is always our craziest cold call stories. So we, over the last year, we took all of our craziest cold calls and cut them all up and made an episode so we can reflect back on the crazy world of brokering for the past year and get ready to make some more cold calls in 2025. What was your worst cold call?
Man, okay, my worst cold call, I would say actually happened probably 2 or 3 weeks after I got to Mercer. I cold called an owner. I was all excited. It was one of Jeff's old clients. They own 2833, 2835 Irving Boulevard in the design district. They said, we got a tenant coming up, we might want to sell it or lease it. So I did my first BOV. I was all jazzed. I won't say who it is, but the owner was flying in on that Friday. And so on a Wednesday, I'm out making calls. And I go to one of the big design district investors. And I'm like telling him who I am and what I'm looking to, what I do. And I was just said, hey, I've got this off-market deal. You own the building next door.
Yeah.
I'm meeting him on Friday. I did my BOV. I think it's worth this price, and he was like, yeah, once you talk to him, I'd love to buy it. And I was all excited, but I told him, I was like, I don't have the listing yet, but I'm going to get it on Friday. And so I remember going to pick up that owner at the airport. And the first question out of his mouth was like, who's John Smith?
Yeah.
And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, oh, he called me and said, hey, he wrote me an offer. And then he said, if you don't want to take my offer and you want to list it, don't go with him, go with some other broker. And I was just remember being 23 and just being like, man, is this how the world works?
Yeah.
I mean, I've got fun. I mean, just all of us could sit around and tell horror stories of cold calling. I mean, I probably have a funnier one that's not depressing like that one. But I mean, I remember going on a cold call with Corby, who is the most straight-laced, amazing human, and walking into a building in GSW and there's a weed farm in there, and just looking at Corby's face and seeing he was like, secretly I was kind of like, yeah, but anyway, that's the favorite part of my job is the different people you get to meet.
Well, I always like asking this. Did you ever have just a very awkward cold call with somebody? What's the most awkward one or worst one or just?
So I'll share a story. It's not a cold call, but it is awkward in nature. So we had a client we had a lot of success with, did a lot of deals for them.
Mm-hmm.
They get a new real estate manager that comes in. This is all kind of during COVID. So everything's still remote.
Yeah.
Still on Zoom, the whole thing. And I get a phone call from this guy and he says, hey, do you remember me? I said, no. He said, well, you interviewed me about 6 years ago to be a junior broker and you didn't hire me. I said, okay. He said, I think you made a bad decision. He said, we're going to make a change in our representation. And I said, you got to be kidding me. I said, you've been holding on to this for 8 years, 6 years, and now you're going to bring it up? This is what you're doing? He's like, yeah, we're making a change. And so they went with a different firm. And I thought, holy cow.
Wow.
So that was the first that had ever happened to me. And honestly, that's the only account I've ever been fired from. Now, we've lost business or whatever, but that's the only account that I've ever, actually been terminated. And we had a good run. We did a bunch of deals for them, and I wish him great success. He only lasted about 6 months, and then he got fired.
Yeah.
So actually, I made the right decision by not hiring him. But that's probably my most awkward, business phone call. And I didn't even recognize the guy. I had no idea who he was.
Yeah.
It was obviously, you didn't make an impression.
Obviously, you never got into brokerage.
Obviously. Yeah.
No one wanted you in brokerage.
Right.
Or you quit trying to be in brokerage because you ended up on the other side of the table,
Yeah.
So,
and now he's on the landlord side. So
whatever. Probably where he's supposed to be.
That's right. Yeah. I don't know that he has it.
You didn't hire me.
You didn't hire me.
What a whiner.
What a whiner.
What was your most awkward or funny cold call that you ever went on or just, got ran off or something that's very memorable to you?
I've had a couple. One was I think it was literally within the same day or same week. I can't remember. It was a long, the beginning of my career, but I walked in and this guy, I remember it was off of 28th Street in Fort Worth. And, he obviously didn't want me in there. And he was like, get out. And I was like, well, just take my card in case you change your mind. Like, I just kept pushing it, even though I should have just left, It was like, he was like, you want me to take your card? I'll take your card. And he slammed it in the trash can. And I was like, okay, I'm going to leave now. But then the next cold call, I went in and it was a trucking yard. And the guy was like, no, I'm not interested, but you want to go to Billy Bob's tonight and go dancing? And I was like, no, I'm out of here too. What am I doing?
That's funny. I had Nathan Denton on here a couple of weeks ago, and he goes, I went and made this call and gave my card to the girl up front. And then, the guy I was looking for wasn't there. And he goes, about 10 minutes later, she calls me. She goes, hey, can you come back here? He comes back there and he goes, the girl came back and goes, hey, do you want to go on a date?
Oh. No, sorry.
He's like, I'm flattered. But
maybe if you give me your business, we can go on a date.
Let's get that. Let's get that decision maker in here, and let's see if we can knock this out. We can go have dinner. So, we make a lot of cold calls. You've probably been in some awkward ones. This question was probably coming.
Oh yeah.
What was your most awkward or funny?
There's not a sketchy cold call up there, right? Because that market is a little
pretty nice.
Yeah, it's pretty. Everyone's usually pretty cordial. I mean, you get the get out, you get the obviously Tucker used it. But we've always used the no smoking. Mm-hmm. That one's always good. You walk in on people who've died, but this one's kind of funny. Mm-hmm. So this was before COVID. We had a Mercer Company flag football team. And we had a pretty good football team, basically bunch of us.
Guinn was running it, right?
Guinn was running it, yeah. He was the Jerry Jones of
He was printing up all the plays, wristbands, and all that stuff.
He was our Jerry Jones, and QB.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure Jerry Jones could be
the
quarterback.
QB?
Yeah.
Okay. That's funny.
But
I figured Turner would be the QB or something.
It was kind of just, they flip-flopped. Mm-hmm. So we were doing that, and some guy ran into me when I caught a ball and tore my ACL. Playing flag football.
That's right.
And that was the end of the Mercer Company football team. After that season, everybody said, we're done with this.
Yeah.
But I tore my ACL, and because of my defibrillator, I can't get an MRI. And that night, it was late. I just drove home. Mm-hmm. I bought a brace at CVS and braced it up and took some ibuprofen and went to sleep.
Yeah.
Woke up the next day and it was just swollen like a basketball. I came into the office and tried to do some work, and I was like, I gotta go see a doctor. Yeah. So I went in and they drained a bunch of fluid off the knee, and they said there's still too much fluid here for us to do anything, and you can't get an MRI anyways. So give it about a month or so and come back, and we'll do some x-rays, and then we'll do a shift test. Typically when you see some athlete that goes down, they immediately do the shift test on their knee, because that's before all the swelling has come into it, and they can check the stability.
Yeah.
So I had too much of that, and I can't get the MRI. So came back in about a month and a half. Well, they gave me that brace, and between that, 45 days or whatever it was, business didn't stop.
Yeah.
And so I was making cold calls with a brace and a torn ACL, kind of limping into these buildings. And I had that Toyota Camry at the time. So it was hard for me to get out of it anyways. Yeah. And it was my left knee. So I would basically have to roll out of the thing. But I'd made a cold call, and it was just a kind of a smaller space. It was like a 7,000 square foot dock high space. And they said they had a broker and they had a good relationship with them, and they weren't going to, they didn't need my assistance. And I said, look, everybody's got a backup quarterback. Mm-hmm. Every pitcher that starts the game doesn't finish the game. If you need me to come off the bench, I'm here.
Yeah. I always like to say, I'm here to audition for second place.
Yeah. So, left that cold call, and 30 or 40 minutes later, I get a call from Garrett Goldstein.
Yeah.
And he goes, hey, what are you doing calling my clients? I was like, well, making cold calls just like usual. He said, "What'd you do to your leg?" I'm like, "Oh, I tore my ACL." He's like, "Yeah, they said some guy walked in here and had this huge leg brace on. They couldn't figure out why he was coming in there. They thought he was like coming in there. He needed some help or something. But no, he came in there trying to sell him a piece of real estate or hand off a flyer to him." I was like, "Yeah, I tore my ACL. I'm hobbling around. I'm just trying to work, just trying to make some money here." So, and he still talks about it. We had a tour, I don't know, about a year ago or something like that. And he brought it back up again.
Oh, that's funny.
That's funny. So obviously it's a great client of his because they wouldn't have called and told him about it. But it was funny that he called and was like, "What'd you do?" Yeah. No, that happens. That happens. You get the broker call. "Hey man, you called on my client." Yeah. Well, you've made a zillion cold calls in your life. What's one of your most interesting cold calls or awkward or funny ones?
I wasn't a huge cold caller. Is this crazy to say out loud as a, street broker? Because I worked for Jim Lake in the beginning. Yeah, you already had your product. So. It was all built in. So I did not, except for when we were, trying to highlight new buildings and that is the walking I did up and down the neighborhood. But for the most part, the phone was always ringing because he was the largest owner down there. So it was just, going from one deal to the next constantly. Yeah. So when I went out on my own, I thought, okay, here is where I need to introduce myself now to the district. Yeah. Because I've been in the Jim Lake bubble and that other people didn't know who I am. And it was totally the opposite. When the minute I left, then the tenants, all my tenants started calling me. And I didn't cold call one of them. Yeah. They started calling me. And then like the guy at 1201 Oak Lawn, Pete, I didn't know Pete. Pete called me. Yeah. And so they all knew each other and then they all talked and then my phone was ringing off the wall. Yeah. So it was, I've always said I was just very blessed and gave good customer service. Yeah. And that goes back to my old retail days of customer service because I do believe that's what this business is. Yeah. And a lot of guys don't. They're like, "Oh, I've got it and they want it. So therefore, screw them to the wall let's see how bad they want it." It's like, I don't really, that's not my forte of what I do. It's tell me what you want for it. And then let me get you as close as you can, but it's got to work for all parties. I'm just more of that middle of the road kind of person. So all that being said, I have not really just walked door to door. But I will say the funniest thing in that regard, the owner, his name was Peter, of 1330 Dragon Street. Okay. Do you remember Goodchild's, the old pink building on the corner? Yep. He called me. It was like on a Labor Day, like a holiday. And he called me and I answered the phone. And he said, my name is Peter and I own a building on Dragon Street and I would like to meet with you. I said, "Okay, great." And I said, "When do you want to meet?" I had no idea what he wanted. And he said, "Well, today's a holiday. How about next week?" And I said, "Okay, I'll be in there on Tuesday. I'll meet you on Tuesday." Yeah. So I walked into his place and introduced myself and said, "You wanted me to be here?" And here I am. I said, "What can I do for you?" And he goes, "Do you know why I called you?" I said, "No, I really don't. I don't have a clue." He goes, "Because I want to sell my building." And I went, "Okay, great." I said, "Well, that's what I do for a living. Yeah. I think I can help you out." He goes, "But do you know why I called you?" And I said, "No." He said, "Because of all the brokers and agents down here, you're the only one that has never walked into my place." Oh, wow. And I thought, the reverse cold call. Total reverse. He said, "All these other guys," he goes, "they just hound me and I get cupcakes and I get calendars and I get pins and stationery." He goes, "I don't need all that crap." He goes, "I just need somebody to sell my building." And he said, "And plus you came as a referral." Yeah. So he said, I want to work with you." I said, "Great." So I'm glad I never bothered you. He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "You never bothered me." And you didn't even have to pitch. No. It's like, I'll take it. Yeah. So yeah, it was kind of interesting. So
reverse cold call. I like it.
It is a reverse cold call. So that's where that's where all of my businesses come from, referrals.
This is something I always like to kind of ask on here. What, you've made a lot of cold calls in your day, developing business.
Yeah.
Give me some awkward, crazy stories. I know you got a bunch of them. So.
Yeah. Well, so I listened to a couple of other podcasts and I thought about that a little bit. And I'm going to tell you a couple of different things. So first off, starting in this funny business, right about the first or second month I started, we went to the GSW bus tour, the LanCarte bus tour.
Yeah.
And I was just shocked that this group of guys, you drive around in a bus, drink beer, and look at buildings. Like, how cool is that?
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah.
And about halfway through the bus tour, our bus gets T-boned by a truck. By like a pickup truck that slides underneath the middle of the bus. And I was just, man, what have I gotten myself into here?
Yeah.
So pretty wild. But
do they have to get a new bus?
Get y'all? Yeah. We just stood out there, continued to drink beer and waited for another bus to come.
Yeah.
But in terms of most of mine is on just funny showings, not so much cold calls, but crazy showings.
Yeah.
And also kind of going way back in old deals. So there used to be a project off of Bickham, which is off Northwest Highway and behind LeBaire over there.
Yeah, there you go.
At the dead end of the street, just a bunch of metal buildings. And Holt owned these buildings personally or with some other partners. So this was always probably top priority.
Yeah.
And I was the new guy tasked with leasing it. So, which subsequently that project, then got handed off to Josh and then the next man up. But just a bunch of metal buildings with ragtag tenants. I think there was a guy kind of illegally working on cars there, a bunch of granite guys.
Yeah.
And so two funny things. So the only time I ever leased a space without a bathroom.
Yeah.
So that's some good brokerage there. Good landlord brokerage.
That's right.
And then some of the tenants got in an argument down there and one of the guys stabbed the other guy. So didn't kill him, but stabbed him.
Oh my gosh!
So that was an interesting one.
Besides your 5-second eternity cold call, give me another funny one. I know you got some just great ones.
All right, I've got a lot. I don't want to I'm not really throwing anybody under the bus. Okay, so there was this was 10 years ago. Okay. So this is, I was. Maybe, this may have been 2013. So I'd been in the business 2 years. And so I'd been making the calls, doing it, and it was starting to happen. Everything was great. And so I cold called this company. It was an HVAC company. And I walked in, and they had the stack of cards from every other broker. I was like, okay, let's see how we can wade through these, hey, look at me waters. So eventually, it paid off. They said, okay, here's what we need. We need 10 to 15,000 feet, but it has to be sprinklered and it has to be standalone. So if you can find that, okay. It's like, dude, well, I knew my availables and I knew them. I knew there was one. It was 548 Forest Center Plaza. Online, release, sprinkler, clear height wasn't the best. Thought, let's go, hop in the car, let's go. We're going to go look at it. It's like, it kind of took him by surprise. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll call the broker. Let's go look at it tomorrow and let's do it. He said, it's sprinklered, right? I said, yep, it's sprinklered. So, okay, awesome. And they did some welding back there. And so their insurance requirements and their corporate, they needed the sprinkler system. So the broker on it, we show up the next day. Broker's just the sweetest little thing. Residential brokers, super sweet and bubbly and loving life. And so, I pull up there with my guys and we walk in, there's a lot of office, there's some drop ceiling. And I remember looking at the drop ceiling, I thought, I don't see that sprinkler head out of there. Oh, no. Okay. All right, let's just keep walking. So they immediately go to the warehouse and they look up and they said, there are no sprinklers in here. And so I'm like, oh no, what do I do here? And so I can't remember her name. She's super sweet. She comes back over. I said, hey, I thought you said this was sprinkler. She said, oh, it is. Here, follow me. I thought, okay. So my guys come with me. We walk, and I see her turn this corner, and I look up, and she's going to a box, and on the box it says Rainbird for the sprinkler system in the small patch of grass.
The irrigation.
And I thought, oh, no. Oh. Yeah, sprinkler, because it has sprinkler heads for the small. And so I'm like, oh, no. So we walk up, and she opens up the Rainbird, and one of my guys is standing right here. And I could just see him doing, the Stewie Griffin? Looking at me, I could just see his head turning, looking at me as she, bless her heart, as she fiddles with this sprinkler system. And it didn't even turn on.
Oh,
so it was like, you talk about a double whammy.
Oh, man.
And so that was the end of the tour. Because I was so sure about it, and there wasn't anybody in there, so I hadn't been in to verify that. But, every other bill. That's why I knew that with Cooper, Brett Lewis, Whitmer, Josh Barnes, whatever was there on my availables was accurate.
Yeah.
I knew that they were always going to be accurate, but it never occurred to me that sprinkler system would be for the 200 square feet of grass.
Yeah.
That's right there. That the Rainbird didn't even work anyway.
Yeah.
So that was remarkably embarrassing.
What was your most awkward cold call you ever made?
Oh, yeah. I've thought about this. It wasn't really a cold call, but I was out kind of doing some market research, at Robert Lynn. You drive the market, and you'd write down building owners and building tenants, and then you try and research who to call on. And so this particular day, I had a 5-speed Honda Accord, manual transmission, because I was super cheap, and I was like, man, this thing gets good gas mileage, And so I'm driving around, and I'm bebopping in these parking lots, and I go to pull out on Beltline, and this car, I see him pull in before I go to pull out, and he comes up right up on me, and I'm on this hill, and when you're in a standard transmission, you don't want to roll back at all. And so he's like right up on me. I'm like, man, if I pop the clutch, I'm going to roll into him. Well, he gets out of his car and he knocks on my window. And so I put the car in park and I roll the window down, and he's like, hey man, I saw what you did. And I'm like, what? And he goes, I saw what you did. And I was like, well, what did I do? He goes, you saw her car, you pulled in there, and then you saw me and you pulled out and left. I'm like, sir, what are you talking about? And he pulls his sunglasses down. He goes, are you effing around on my wife? And I was like, totally shocked. I went from total shock to scared out of my mind. Because think about, like, if you suspected that.
Yeah.
And then you thought you caught the guy.
Yeah.
I was nowhere near I was just in my car the whole time. Just imagine if you suspected that. I'm like, this is how 2020 episodes start.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the news at 5.
Yeah. This is local real estate broker murder.
Yeah.
Cold blood.
Oh my gosh. So how did you defuse it?
Well, I had all these business cards. I had all this paperwork here. I'm like, no, man, I'm in the real estate business, and here's my driver's license. And if I was the guy, I would be showing you all the stuff, and really tried to
just calm
him down, man.
Yeah.
And so finally he let me go, and he was like, all right, man, I believe you. And way before GPS, so I couldn't be like, man, you can track my phone. I'll show you. I don't even know who that is. And, it's how
he drove off and go, tell Sarah I said bye.
I tried to see him. Oh, man. So that was probably my most awkward moment.
We make a lot of cold calls in this business on the brokerage side. And so what was one of your most awkward or funny cold calls you ever got into?
The one that sticks out in my mind is there used to be a company called Dixon Furniture.
Oh,
do you remember them?
I sold his building.
Okay, well, I sold him that building.
Okay,
and
he's at Houston, right?
Yeah,
yeah.
He was on Chancellor Row leasing one of the Sherman Pearson buildings. Mm-hmm. He was in the worst building in Brook Hollow, and I was like, I'm going to call on this guy until he does something, because this is half the foundation was falling over, the roof leaked. I mean, I was like, this guy's gonna do a real estate deal.
Yeah.
And every time I walked in there, get out of here! I told you don't come back. I mean, just barking at me, and it's a couple years in the business, And I was like, I'm not going to call on this guy. And then I got back in my car. I was like, man, that's not who I am. I'm going to call on this guy. What's the worst thing he can do? Scream at me again?
Yeah.
I walked in there. He's like, well, I need 60,000 feet. I was like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
After all that, you're going to talk to me? He's like, no, I'm serious. I need 60,000 feet. And I said, well, there's an auction on Saturday for 60,000 feet just up Chancellor Row.
Yeah.
And that was that Glen Oaks Industries that went bankrupt. They were a pants manufacturer for JCPenney's.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, there was an auction for 60,000 footer. And I'm like, well, can I register you for the auction, sir? And he's like, yeah. So, man, I got all excited. I'm like, I don't know. There'll be 20 people there or nobody there. But anyway, so me and him show up Saturday morning or Thursday morning, whatever day it was. And I was there. Jeff and Dennis Lord were there. And one other guy was there. 3 of us. And there's a bankruptcy trustee and cameras. And like, guys, we're going to have an auction. We're going to sell this building today. There's no reserve. And we're going to go. And I'm thinking, man, surely this guy he's been the cheapest building in Brook Hollow, probably paying $1 rent.
Yeah.
I'm like, sure, this guy's not going to buy this building. And Dennis and Jeff raised their hand, and guy over there raised his hand. And, this thing kind of goes around, and they take a pause, and the bankruptcy trustee makes a phone call and talks about it. He's like, guys, we're going 1 more minute, and then somebody's buying this thing. And at the very end, my guy hadn't raised his hand. And then at the very end, he raised his hand at $900,000 and bought a 60,000 square foot sprinkler building.
Yeah.
And if you remember, it had a 2-acre yard on the back of it.
Yeah. That building today would have been like one of the most coveted things ever with that yard. That was awesome.
So he bought it at auction for $800,000 or $900,000, $12-13 a foot. And and those auction deals are closed. Like, he closed in 2 weeks and put up firm money and all that.
Yeah.
And anyway, I think I got paid a 3 or 4% fee. And I think that deal actually might have kept me in the business because I was probably about to run out of money. So just remember that. I'm like, well, hey, if that can happen, if I can turn that guy into get the hell out of here, into a paycheck, I'm like, I can do that again. So, that was a cold call where I'm like, man, why am I wasting my time? This guy is mean to me. He's in a worse building. They're probably going broke. And next thing you know, 30 days later, I'm getting a check out of that. So,
What's the diciest situation you've been in on the street when you're cold calling? Or give me a funny Todd Hubbard story, because there's tons of them. The dildo one was good, but I know you got another one. So
I think one of my I do have a bunch, but one of the more embarrassing ones was I had been calling on this company for a long time, and I got up to the receptionist. And she kind of shut me down, but I'd noticed that all the executives were in this conference room. And so they were in a meeting. And so I got so distracted looking to see if the guy I was looking for was in there that as I was leaving the building, I went, instead of opening the door, I went face first into glass. And it left like this grease mark on the glass, and it knocked me down to where everyone came running out of the conference room to check on me. And I kind of got up and I said, I'm okay. I said, but next time, remember me. I'm the real estate guy that's been coming by. And they're like, I said, remember me as a dude that left this grease stain on your glass.
Did it work? Did you end up making a deal with them?
Yeah, actually did.
So this is something I like to ask. So, like, what was the worst cold call you ever made?
Oh, dude. So I was in the business maybe a month.
Yeah.
I was down there calling on Irving Boulevard and Mockingbird. It was a Friday midday, and I kind of, had been told Fridays everyone's a little happier to see you stop by.
Yeah.
So I went to test that. I walked in on a group, and it seemed maybe they had just moved in. The lights were off. And I said, hello? And this big old guy, about 400 pounds, around the corner. And he stares at me and goes, what the fuck do you want? I said, well, I'm Corbin with Lee & Associates. This building just sold down the street. I thought you might want to know about it. He said, do you know how to fucking read? I said, well, yeah. I was a little offended, just got out of SMU. Of course I can read. Yeah. He goes, well, it says no fucking soliciting on the door. Yeah. And I had my comp in my hand, and I went to set it on the desk. He said, don't you put it down. And I looked at him, and I looked at the door, and I threw it on the desk, and I just walked out. And I was, 3-4 weeks in the business. I had no idea. Yeah. But if that had happened to me today, it'd be a totally different story. Yeah. Of course I can't read. I'm in sales. Yeah. You can play that off a little bit better.
So it's funny. Jeff always taught us this when you got the no soliciting one. He goes, oh, I thought it said no smoking. I'm not smoking. I thought you just didn't want to smoke in your building.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah.
What's one of the most awkward cold calls you've ever made, or situations on a call you've gotten into with somebody?
I actually cold called Mark Cuban many years ago and actually talked to him.
Did
I
you?
didn't know it was him until I hung up. I can't tell you how many, dead people I've called. That, you know what I'm saying? You call them, they're like, they're dead. And you're like, oh, God, condolences.
So are you the decision maker now?
We did have a guy, I will tell you, we had a guy that worked at Marcus for a real short amount of time, and his calls were always the best to listen to because he was a triple net lease broker, and those guys are just all they do is call, and a lot of times they're not interested in establishing a relationship. They're like, hey, do you want to sell? Yes or no? No, and they hang up.
Yeah.
Well, he called one, and I remember he asked for the guy, and they were like, I'm sorry, who is this? And he's like, oh, my name's Matthew. And they go, oh, he's dead. And he goes, well, that's funny because it sounded like you were just about to go get him. But now that you found out that I'm with Marcus, he's now dead. So, like, what's going on? And he just would always have those conversations. And we always thought those were great.